You can chant. Shisam Tambuvi Ukritya Rudra Sahasotito Hasan Gambhira Nato. Ladies, please. Dasadasto Taputa Darivani Sato Garo Chitam Kritya Rudra I'm going to read yesterday's verse because we need, well, whatever it was, yesterday or last week. And then we'll read today's verse. Maitreya said, when Lord Shiva heard from Narada that Sati, his wife, was now dead because of Prajapati Daksha's insult to her, and that his soldiers had been driven away by the Ribu demigods, he became greatly angry. So word meanings? Krudaha, very angry. Sudashta Oshtaputa, pressing his lips with his teeth. Saha, he, Lord Shiva. Dujati, having a cluster of hair on his head. Jatam, one hair. Tadit, of electricity. Vani, of fire. Sata, a flame. Ugra, terrible. Ruchisham, blazing. Ukritya, snatching. Rudraha, Lord Shiva. Sahasa, at once. Uttitaha, stood up. Hasan, laughing. Gambhira, deep. Nadaha, sound. Visasarja, dashed. Tam, that hair. Bhuvi, on the ground. Who would like to guess what's happening without reading the verse? Somebody's angry. Who's angry? And there's something about a hair. Where'd the hair come from? Where'd the hair come from? He pulled the hair out of his head to utter a curse. Thus Lord Shiva, being extremely angry, pressed his lips with his teeth and immediately snatched from his head a strand of hair which blazed like electricity or fire. He stood up at once, laughing like a madman, and dashed the hair on the ground. Text 3. A fearful black demon, as high as the sky and as bright as 3 suns combined, was thereby created. Let's try that again. A fearful demon, as high as the sky and as bright as 3 suns combined, was thereby created. His teeth very fearful, and the hairs on his head like burning fire. He was black but bright, as 3 suns, if you could imagine. He had thousands of arms, equipped with various weapons, and he was garlanded with the heads of men. Text 4. When the gigantic demon asked with folded hands, "What shall I do, my Lord?" Lord Shiva, who is known as Bhutanat, directly ordered, "Because you are born from my body, you are the chief of all my associates. Therefore, kill Daksha and his soldiers at the sacrifice." Purport. Here is the beginning of competition between Brahma Tejas and Shiva Tejas. By Brahma Tejas, Brahminical strength, Bhrigu Muni had created the Ribu demigods who had driven away the soldiers of Lord Shiva, stationed in the arena. When Lord Shiva heard that his soldiers had been driven away, he created the tall black demon Virabhadra to retaliate. There is sometimes a competition between the mode of goodness and the mode of ignorance. Have you experienced that before? Who won? Sometimes you won, sometimes you lost, right? As you advance more, you win more and lose less. And then eventually you never lose. That is the way of material existence. Even when one is situated in the mode of goodness, there is every possibility that his position will be mixed or attacked by the mode of passion or ignorance. That is the law of material nature. Although pure goodness, or Shuddha Sattva, is the basic principle in the spiritual world, pure manifestation of goodness is not possible in the material world. Thus, the struggle for existence between different material qualities is always present. The quarrel between Lord Shiva and Bhrigu Muni, centering around Prajapati Daksha, is the practical example of such competition between the different qualitative modes of material nature. So, the third canto came out in 1975, and it was the first time that we read that you could do devotional service in the mode of ignorance, which was like a total shock to us because we always understood devotional service is transcendental. So whoever does devotional service is transcendental. It's uncontaminated by the 3 modes of nature. The holy name is pure, the deity is pure, the Bhagavatam is pure, the service is pure, everything is pure. And then this bomb is dropped on us that you can do devotional service in passion, goodness, or ignorance. Well, so devotional service is transcendental. Yes, but the person doing it may not be. Devotional service is transcendental, but the reason for doing it may not be. And so one example is given that sometimes a devotee thinks, I'm the best devotee. Okay, whatever. We know that's not right, but sometimes a devotee may wrongly think, I'm better than everybody. So, influenced by the modes of ignorance. I'm the best devotee. Everyone's lower than me. And every morning you chant Trinadapi Sunichena, which means everyone's better than me. And even though you chant it every morning for the last 14 years, it's still possible you may feel better than everyone. Yes? Yeah, it's possible, right? That's the influence of ignorance. So, You know, chapter 7, verse 14, Krishna says two contradictory things. He says, it's impossible to get out of Maya, in the first half of the verse. In the second half of the verse, he says, it's easy to get out of Maya. So I think that's what we're dealing with here. It's easy to be in Maya, and it's easy not to be in Maya. It's easy to be transcendental, and it's easy not to be. Right? So, if Krishna consciousness were just some ritualistic religion, some formula, all you'd have to do is do the formula. Like, I did arti today, so if you were following me and counting how many circles, then you would say, oh, he did the arti correctly because he did the right number of circles. But what if while doing the arti I was thinking, I hope everyone notices that I'm doing the circles correctly and they think I'm a great devotee. We kind of ruin it, right? Yes? So doing the circles in and of itself is not perfection. Perfection is the consciousness or the mood with which we do it. That's the difference between a ritualistic religion and bhakti. Because bhakti, everything in bhakti is about the mood. Do you know that Prabhupada once taught the devotees, he was explaining to the pujaris how you should offer food, bhoga, to the deity, what you should be thinking. And basically he was saying, you should be very humble. You should be thinking that whatever you're offering, it's really of no value to Krishna. And you should be thinking, actually, you are of no value to Krishna. Nothing you can give and nothing you have and yourself, everything, it's of no value. So all you can do is ask Krishna, I brought this to you, will you accept it? You only have your devotion. Because, your bananas and strawberries and sour cream or yogurt or whatever, it's like, Krishna is the one who creates it all. So it's like, it's like giving, Gucci a Gucci something, like he creates it all. It's like big deal, So how can I please him? So Prabhupada said, you think, you should think, well, Krishna, I brought this to you. It's of no value to you. I have nothing. You please accept it. He said. And then Prabhupada another time said, then Krishna will accept it. He said, but if you don't have that mood, Prabhupada once said something very heavy. Krishna will kick that offering off the altar. Whoa. Have you ever heard that before? That one? Now all the pujaris are like, have to take tranquilizers when they make the bhoga offerings now. Is Krishna going to kick this off the altar? Yeah. We also learned many interesting things about the holy name. And from Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. And Prabhupada explained these things also, but it is more emphatically explained by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, in which he said that if you chant Hare Krishna, Krishna is not there unless you chant Hare Krishna in the mood of I am a servant or I want to be a servant. Because if I chant Hare Krishna thinking, hey, look at me. All right, where are my beads? I have to do a demonstration. It's time for a demonstration. Okay, I'm going to chant. I'm going to chant the way I think you should chant. This would be a nice way to chant. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Look good? Right. So what am I thinking? Look at me. Look how nicely I'm chanting. I don't think anybody chants as nicely as I do. Are they noticing? Because I'm showing them how to chant. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Oh, they're all sleeping, and unlike me, who is very attentive to the holy name. Hare Krishna. Yeah, so that could happen, yes? No, Krishna, let me serve you or anything. Just, I'm the big dog. I'm the top top dog. I'm the top dog in the japa room. Hare Krishna. Yeah, you're definitely the top dog. No doubt about it. So, we learn from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta this same idea, that something can be pure and the consciousness can contaminate it. Something could be impure and the consciousness could purify it. Like when Vidura offered banana peels, but Krishna accepted, because there was bhakti. Krishna would not eat at the house of Duryodhana, even though what he was offering was much better. So, it's extremely important to remember that Krishna is only attracted by bhakti, and part of the bhakti that he's attracted by is the humility of the devotee. You remember the story of Sanatana Goswami. When Sanatana Goswami had finally met Mahaprabhu, Sanatana Goswami was a very, very qualified, aristocratic, well-educated, highly placed person. But he came to Mahaprabhu as a sadhu, beggar, with the utmost humility. And Mahaprabhu said, your humility is like, I can't take it. It's like my heart is just melting, like, my heart's all over the place. It's dripping on the ground, Stop it! It's too, But what really Mahaprabhu is saying is that this humility is what attracts me. Your humility is attractive. You remember what happened when Brahma became proud? He got chastised. You remember what happened when Indra became proud? He got chastised. You remember what happened when Durvasa became proud? So go down the list. What happens when a devotee becomes proud? Krishna doesn't like it. And if Krishna is kind to that devotee, he'll straighten the devotee out. He'll do something. Sometimes Krishna straightens us out. When you think you're God's gift to the world, he'll create some situation for you to do something really dumb, and everyone in ISKCON find out about it. Yeah. Just to, make sure, you understand he knows what's going on. So, we see this example. It's pretty clear that wherever there's humility, Krishna's attracted. Wherever there's pride, he's not. So, it's not that we can just do bhakti any old way in any consciousness and it's considered pure or valid or equal. It's not, because everything depends on anyabhilashito shunyam. It depends on intention. Why are you doing it? In the beginning of the movement, devotees didn't know much. And they did a lot of things that were wrong. And Prabhupada never corrected them. He said, well, you're doing very nicely. Keep up the good work. Why did he say that? Because he saw the mood. And he wanted to encourage the mood. He didn't want to get caught up in details. Oh, you did that. That wasn't good. If Prabhupada saw the mood was good, that was the main thing. Of course, in dealing with the deities, you have to be careful. You can't just concoct and make offenses. But where things were not that essential to be done exactly according to the book, and devotees didn't know what's even in the book, Prabhupada just saw that the sincerity and the intention was most important. So, and many times Prabhupada said, your material qualification is not going to please Krishna, it's your sincerity. That's what's important. So, how do you be sincere? Prabhupada said, just try to be sincere. Try to do your best. That's your sincerity. And because Krishna is a person and he's not a judge, he doesn't look at us according to, oh, what did you do today? Oh, you only did 10 Bhagavad Gitas and Radhika Prasad did 50, so you're useless. I don't want to talk to you. It's not like that. We might be like that, but don't ever think Krishna is like us in the negative sense. He's not. So, Krishna sees that you try. So even if you're falling on your face but you're trying, Krishna sees the trying. We see the falling. We're discouraged because we see, I'm falling on my face, and Krishna sees, no, you're trying, that's good. So it's really important to see things as Krishna sees them, because when we see things as we see them, we could become discouraged by something that's encouraging Krishna. So you're falling on your face, but you're trying, and Krishna's like, yes, very good. And you go home, disappointed, and Krishna's like, no, that was good, you tried. But I failed, but you tried. That's what Krishna's seeing. You're seeing that you failed. Krishna's seeing that you tried. He's seeing the motive. So, due to our conditioning, we tend to see everything according to external results, right? But Krishna sees everything according to motive, consciousness. That's what bhakti is about. So you can be very, very successful and be completely motivated by passion or ignorance, right? Isn't it? It's possible. I want to be the number one Prabhu. I want to be known as the number one Prabhu in Sydney. Yeah. Well, if that's your desire, I have some maybe sad information for you. You're in the wrong movement. This is not a movement to become the number one Prabhu. This is a movement to become the number 10 billionth Prabhu on the bottom of the pile. This is what this movement is for. So if you're in this movement to become the number one Prabhu, you should start your own movement, and then you can be the number one Prabhu in that movement. But Prabhupada did not create this movement for people to fulfill their material needs and aspirations. He created this movement so that we could learn how to love Krishna and to understand what is pure bhakti. So the other point that I want to touch on, that I just briefly mentioned, is how Krishna says, Daiviyeshu gunamayi mama maya duratya. Duratya means impossible to overcome. My material energy is impossible to overcome. Mam eva ye prapadyante. But if you surrender to me, it's easy. You can easily cross beyond it. It's just really interesting to think about. Like what today seems impossible, tomorrow may be like a little puddle of water. You know, today it's an ocean, tomorrow it's a puddle. You just jump over it. So that's very important to recognize, because it can be impossible to get out of the material world, or it could be very easy if you have the mercy of the Guru, if you follow the instructions well. And we all have this experience, don't we? That sometimes it's so easy, and sometimes it's not. Right? And why? Because some contamination is there within our consciousness or within our practice. And it's interesting if you made a study of Prabhupada's instructions to devotees who had problems, you would see kind of a pattern, like don't worry about this, not a big problem. Krishna's bigger than your problem. Krishna's more powerful than your problem. We think, I have such a big problem, oh my God, I'll never overcome it. And Prabhupada doesn't see it that way. Maybe we're looking at it because we're caught in the modes of nature and we can't see our way out of it. But from the transcendental perspective, from Prabhupada's perspective, you'll see that many, many times. Usually, when someone would have a big problem, Prabhupada would always give the same answer, that you follow the process, all problems will be gone. And therefore, Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtan. You recite this every morning, right? Param Vijayate, supreme glory to Sri Krishna Sankirtan. Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtan means the holy name is more powerful than your Maya, right? So if you ever think, I'm in the depths of Maya and I can never get out, that's a lack of faith in the holy name. Well, it's true, we can't get out on our own. But the holy name and the process, the Bhagavatam, the Sangha, the deities, the Dham, all these things are way more powerful than any kind of ignorance that we're in, right? So if we associate with it, then you start to get the same feeling. Oh yeah, this is not difficult. I can do this. There's a verse, it's a really interesting verse. There's a Brahmin from a place called Avanti. And before he was a renunciate, he was a scoundrel, basically. Everybody hated him. No, he was a miser and a scoundrel, and yeah, he had like billions of whatever, and his family had like nothing. And people hated him. And eventually, somehow, he became a renunciate. And he took to the path of bhakti. And then he said something which is really interesting, because you wouldn't think a devotee would say this. He said, I will cross over the ocean of material existence. Like if Bhakta Joe was in the temple today and he came in and before class he said, I will cross over the ocean of material existence. Everyone would be like, yeah, you'll probably eat 20 gulab jamuns for breakfast. Like, what are you talking about? Wouldn't it? Something like that. Like, he'll probably bloop next week. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But this verse is glorified. Like a devotee saying, I will cross over the ocean of material existence. And it's not being said out of pride. And he says, I know I can cross over the ocean of material existence because so many people before me did it who are just like me by following the process. So it's not about me. It's like, there's a good boat. If I get on the good boat, I'll cross over. So there is this sense of humility that sounds like pride, that if I get on the boat will take me. It's not me, I just got on the boat. So that's all I have to do. So what's the boat? Well, I'm chanting Hare Krishna, I'm reading Bhagavatam, I'm doing all these things. So I'm on the boat. It's not my qualification, but I did get on the boat. The little qualification I have is that I got on the boat. And the boat's... So we can feel that way. I will cross. Maya? No, she can't touch me. Of course, at the same time, Prabhupada said you should always be afraid. If you're going to, fear is one of the main features of material life. The problem is we sometimes fear the wrong thing. So we should be afraid of forgetting Krishna, right? Use fear for that. But at the same time, we can have confidence. Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtan. The holy name is all victorious. So even little old me, who has done so many material things, done who knows how many sinful activities, how many offenses, whatever, if I take to the process, even I can be pure. And so I can say, I will do this. How can I say I will? If I'm determined to do it, then I can say I will. I will cross over it. Why? Because I'm following the process. I'm on the boat. That's it. Otherwise, forget it. You can do everything perfectly, but if your consciousness is connected to ignorance and passion, it's going to be really difficult. So, my dear devotees, what are some symptoms of ignorance? Since we're talking about ignorance here, obviously anger. So if any of you have issues with anger, that's not good, because that binds you to ignorance. If you have issues with resentment, that's not good. It binds you to ignorance. If you have issues with jealousy and enviousness, that's not good. The reason that we want to develop the qualities of a Vaishnava, at least the qualities of Sattva Gun, is because these lower qualities bind us to the material world. So we're trying to transcend, and we're tying ourselves up like at the bottom of the well. We're trying to get out of the well, and we're like jumping into the bottom with weights on it. That's what the mode of ignorance is. So therefore, Prabhupada says many, many times, although it's not, it's interesting, it's not like popular knowledge in ISKCON. There are things that Prabhupada says that somehow are not like on the top of the list knowledge. Like we may not be that aware. But Prabhupada says we should live in the mode of goodness, because from goodness you can get to transcendence easily. Because Shuddha Sattva and Sattva Guna are very similar in many ways. Sattva Guna may not be for Krishna, and Shuddha Sattva is, but the qualities of them are often the same. And from there, it's natural to be Krishna conscious. You try to be Krishna conscious from the mode of ignorance. Like stay up till 1 every morning, eat mushrooms and onions and garlic for dinner, and make sure you watch a lot of movies before you go to bed. And like that's not going to work. You go to bed early, you eat sattvic food, you don't overeat, and so forth. It's obvious, isn't it? That's what we have to do. But what's not obvious is that we do a lot of things that are tamasic and rajasic in our consciousness, and we don't notice it, like criticism, anger, fault-finding, as I said, jealousy, enviousness, resentment, and so on. And the problem is, or pride, as we're talking about, the problem is, if you're battling with these things and you're not even aware of it, then how are you going to solve the problem? So one of the problems is often we're not even aware of these things. We're just oblivious, or we don't want to be aware. So we're being controlled by the modes of nature in many ways, and we're not aware of it. Or we're aware of it and we don't do anything about it because we don't think it's that important. It's like, well, it doesn't really matter because I chant my rounds. One would, if I am being bound very strongly by anger and envy and criticism and fault-finding and resentment, etc., I would question, are you actually chanting your rounds? Like, what kind of rounds are you chanting? Because if you're actually chanting, you wouldn't be battling with these kinds of things. So I think it's really important to reflect on that. Not like, well, I chant my rounds, so what does it matter if I'm, feeling resentment and anger, and I know I'm proud, and I know I'm angry, but I chant my rounds. Well, it's not working, Prabhu, because if you were chanting, there would at least be some improvement. So maybe you're chanting 16 apparent rounds, shadow rounds. They look like rounds, but they're not. So that's something important to recognize. Because if I'm doing the process well, I should be living more or less a sattvic life, or at least I should be aware when I'm not in sattva guna, and I should be doing something to improve it. At least that much. I can't say we can all just go from tamagun to sattva guna in 10 seconds, but part of the process is awareness. And that's a big thing, just being aware. Obviously, if we're not aware, you can't work on it because you don't know what to work on. Another problem is we don't care. Have you ever said that? I say, Prabhu, you shouldn't really think like that. I know, but I don't care. You ever done that one? As if that makes it okay, right? Because I don't care, it's okay to be that way, right? What does I don't care mean? Where does I don't care come from? It comes from tamagun. I don't care is laziness. I'm not going to do anything, right? I know my rounds are bad, but I don't care. Translated as, I know my rounds are bad, and I'm not going to do anything about it, so leave me alone. Okay? You got it? I'm doing my service, don't bother me. All right. See you in the next life, Better luck next time. It's not like you're going to buy your way into Vaikuntha just because of service. I mean, that could happen, but if we see symptoms of ignorance and passion in our life, that's a sign something's wrong, right? Even though, okay, I'm chanting my rounds, I'm doing my service, that's good, for sure, but something's wrong, because I shouldn't year after year be lingering with these things, So that's important. And if we don't care, then nothing's going to happen, because you have to care. Just like today, we're doing a course in humility. Because I'm so humble, I'm qualified to do the course. Everybody knows that, right? So, one of the goals of this course is just to develop a desire to be humble, because that's a big thing, to even have the desire. Because a lot of people, we're not humble, we don't care. We kind of like not being humble, like bossing people around and bullying and pushing and being in charge. And so just the desire to be humble, that's huge, and you come to this workshop and that's all you get is the desire to be humble. That's wow, that's pretty good. For the first time in 10 zillion lifetimes, you've got the desire to be humble. Because the reason we're still here is because we don't have that desire, right? So, just to say, yes, Prabhu, you're right, I am proud and I'm going to do something about it, that's huge, as opposed to, I know I'm proud, but what can I do? It's just how I am. You ever said that one? Prabhu, you're not treating the devotees nice. Leave me alone, it's just how I am. Okay, maybe you're better than you were before. There was a devotee in Russia or somewhere, temple president, really heavy duty, rah, screaming and yelling at people, and the devotees say, Prabhu, you should be nicer. He said, you should have seen me before I was a devotee. If I got upset with you, I would have killed you. Now I'm just yelling at you. He was KGB, so yeah, that's what he did if he didn't like you. So, but at least we should see some improvement. Okay, maybe I'm in the mode of passion, I'm graduating into passion, it's better than ignorance. We should see some awareness and some improvement. So this isn't important. Otherwise, I'm wearing a dhoti and kurta, I have tilak and kunti, and I chant in my rounds. And I may be, not behaving properly. I may be really influenced by the modes of nature. And I think, well, but I'm a devotee, so it's okay. But that's not what a devotee does. Sometimes a devotee would do something really, really bad. And they would tell Prabhupada, so this devotee did this. And Prabhupada would say, devotees don't do that. You ever have that one? This devotee, I can't believe this devotee did that. Say, no, devotees don't do that. I mean, I don't want to call anybody not a devotee, but it's a good point that Prabhupada made. If you say, I just don't understand, how is it that this devotee, he's bullying people all the time, or he's always fault-finding. No, but devotees don't do that. So, at least we can think that way about ourselves. Right? If we're acting that way, and calling myself a devotee, maybe not yet, because devotees don't act that way. So, I think that's enough to digest before I give you indigestion. But we should leave time for questions or comments. Yes? Same question you asked last night? Okay.
I've seen some Sanskrit translating Kruta as grumpy.
Translating?
Kruta as grumpy.
Oh, Krota, grumpy. Okay.
My question is, why do we become grumpy and frustrated and lose our sense of humor after we become grumpy?
Does that happen to everyone after they're initiated? Well, I'll tell you something we're going to talk about today. Preview of coming attractions. If you're deciding to come, you may want to come after you hear this. If you're deciding to come, you may not want to come. Because this is not a light workshop. This is not for the faint of heart. Because you're going to confront your... There's a saying, magnificent is the man who doesn't run away from his own reflection. So we'll have to look at ourselves. There is a phenomena that I've been told by. Devotees have just told me this in several different sanghas. That, when you're initiated, there's a lot expected of you, right? And so sometimes you're not to the mark, but if you're not acting to the mark, you fear that you'll be condemned for that. You're expected, so you fake it. At home you're one thing, in public you're another, and you don't want to be honest about it because you fear that your guru will be displeased, your god brothers or god sisters will be displeased. That's one thing. When you take a vow, it's pretty serious. Before you take the vow, if you don't chant 16 and follow 4 principles, it's like, well, I had a bad day. It's not the end of the world, I can start over. But once you take a vow, then there's more of a sense of guilt and shame. So I had an interesting experience. I'll let you interpret it as you want. But, there's a letter in which Prabhupada said, he said initiation is for the people who are going to be spreading the mission. It's not for everybody. It's not necessary. Everybody can chant, take prasadam. In the early days, we never initiated congregational people. That never happened. I was like, why is he getting initiated? He doesn't live in the temple. The initiation is not for the preachers. And so in the letter, Prabhupada said that. So there are some Gaudiya movements outside of ISKCON, and they initiate people with less requirements, because traditionally you didn't make vows at initiation, and Prabhupada wanted us to make vows because he didn't know what we would do if we didn't make vows, because we're not coming from Vaishnava families or Brahmin families. So just to make sure we don't fall into passionate ignorance, he had us make vows. But there's this Gaudiya movement, and they make lesser vows, lesser number of rounds, 3 regulative principles, kind of. Well, you know what I'm saying. There's just you should chant 16, but if you at least chant 4. And you should strictly follow 4 principles, but at least 3.5. You know what I mean. You try your best. And I noticed that the devotees of ISKCON in general were a little more stressed than the devotees in that movement. It was like obvious to me. They were like just kind of a little more carefree, happy-go-lucky. And I said to the temple president in that city, I said, "Do you notice that?" He said, "Yeah, I noticed that, because they haven't taken those vows." So I think it means that if you're going to take those vows, make sure they're fairly easy for you to follow, that it's not going to stress you out. So I think that's important. And it's important to, I think it's also important to know, if you have taken shelter of a guru, that's your guru, whether you formalize it or not. It's like you have a girlfriend and you want to get married and you don't know when, but that's your girlfriend. That's your fiance. That's it. Whether you're married or not, it's more or less the same. So, someone might say, "I don't have a guru because I didn't take Diksha." No, you've accepted this person as your guru. It's not your Diksha guru yet, he's your Siksha guru. That's the same thing. He's Sakshat Hari for you, representative of God. So I think that's also important to understand, because someone's thinking, I want to have this relationship with my guru, and until I formalize it and make the vow, it's not really there. That's not true. It's not true. But if you have any reluctance, then you wait. It's not a problem. So that could be a reason. Another reason could be a misunderstanding. I think a lot of devotees think, a lot of human beings think, if I do something, I hit a milestone, everything will be easy after that. Like you're not married and you think, if I just get married, it'll solve my problems. It solves some, but it presents new problems. If I just get initiated, then it'll be easy. In some ways it is, but in some ways there's new challenges. So I think that kind of rude awakening, that, I sat in the ceremony and it's like, okay, it's over, so am I liberated? I kind of feel liberated. Or some devotees say, I don't feel any different after initiation. Well, it's like initiation, it's like, okay, well, you have the mantra, you've made your vows and so forth, or you've been given your second initiation, but you have to use it. You have to take advantage of it. And then, so I think maybe for some it's like, oh, I thought it was all downhill after this. And I realized, no, it's actually the work is just beginning. Now it's serious. So really, what's really interesting about initiation? With first initiation, you're not getting a new mantra. You already have the Hare Krishna mantra. You're not becoming free from sin. You already are. You chant Hare Krishna, it frees you from sin. You take Charanamrita, it frees you from sin. You see the deity, frees you from sin. It's not like today you get Divya Gyan. You're enlightened today. You've been enlightened for years. Right? You have your guru, you have your mantra, you have your knowledge, you have everything. So what's happening at initiation? What's the magic? Your commitment is being formalized. That's all. And with that formal commitment, okay, we'll give you a name, because that's part of the Pancha Samskar of initiation, that you should change your name. And it's like saying, okay, now that I'm initiated, I'm serious about what I'm doing. I'm going to commit to it. But in terms of your knowledge, your mantra, your connection with your guru, all that's already there. So it's not like, are you ready to fully commit when that time comes? Okay. Then you can do that. That's your choice. And nobody should force you and put you on a conveyor belt. Well, in 6 months I think you'll be ready. You've been in the temple 6 months. No, that's your, if you may be satisfied. You don't even have a Siksha guru or a Diksha guru. You have Prabhupada, you're satisfied. Okay. What's wrong with you, Prabhu? You haven't chosen a Diksha guru, having a big council meeting to figure out what's wrong with you. It's like, it's fine. You have Prabhupada, You're good. When you meet your guru, you meet your guru. Maybe you haven't met your guru. Maybe it'll be 10 years. It doesn't matter. So, you have any ideas why that happens? Other ideas? You have any theories? It doesn't happen to everybody. It's kind of scaring the people who aren't initiated. Sometimes devotees say they have a harder time after initiation. But sometimes when you try harder, it makes things more difficult, you know. Does that make sense? Like you're trying to perfect it, and initiation should be a natural process. It's like you're already doing it, and now it's like formalized. You know, it's like you're in love with this woman, you've known her for 5 years. It's like natural to be married. It's like, right? But if you've only known her for 3 weeks, that's a little awkward. So it should be natural.
So we can still keep our sense.
We can what?
So we can still keep our sense of people.
If you're a cowherd boy, it's required. Yeah, gopis also, it's required. You know that pastime in Manasi Ganga when Krishna, he's disguised as a boatman and the gopis hire him, you know, and Krishna's, and the gopis are saying, can you take us across the river? And he's saying, I'm really tired, I don't feel like it. He says, but you're the only boat. Yeah, I know, but go try to find another boat. And they finally convince him, and then, you know, he takes a nap in the middle of the Manasi. I'm too tired, I gotta take a nap. It's all funny, joking. Prabhupada was quite funny at times, and quite serious at other times. Yes?
Do you think, when we're just talking about like trying really hard for that perfection, do you think that kind of ties in with that Tamas Rajas thing where we're trying so hard to do the perfect kirtan or the perfect,
Yeah, it could be.
and then that's actually polluting it?
Yeah, it could be. Or if you're trying to perfect something materially, and you think that the material perfection is the perfection in bhakti, that's not good, because Krishna may not even like what you did, because it could be more about you doing it perfectly than about pleasing Krishna. Or it could be more about you impressing others that you've done it perfectly. So, if you remember that this is a relationship, and just like in any relationship, right? Let's say you play guitar and you and I are friends. Our friendship is not based on how well you play guitar. Like if you play really well or not so well, that's not, it's like icing maybe, but it's not the foundation of the relationship. So Krishna's a person and we have a relationship. So why would you being perfect at something make any difference to him unless you were trying to be perfect only because you thought this would please him? So you want to do it as best you can. Then yeah, that's good for the relationship. So when we impersonalize or depersonalize Krishna, then we get into these things. But in ordinary if you think of ordinary relationships and relate that to Krishna, mostly it's going to be similar, and it really helps a lot. Like I often say, if you say I have to chant, well, how does your friend feel if you say I have to go out with you? Right? It's like it doesn't feel good. Like you don't like me, you don't want to spend time with me. I have to do this for you. I have to chant. And we always say that, and we don't even think. What did I just say? I have to chant the holy name. The holy name is Krishna. We just basically said, Krishna, I have to spend time with you. Oh my God. I don't want to do that. That's what we said. But because we just think it's a mantra, not a person, we don't even notice what we just said. To say, I have to chant a mantra is like, yeah, it's a process. I have to do it. I don't like it. Whatever. But to say, I have to, Krishna, I have to spend time with you and I don't want to, that's really bad. But we don't think like that. So when you personalize everything, then it becomes very clear. It's about the relationship, what is pleasing, what's in my heart, what is my motive, and that's all about bhakti. And materially speaking, we're just trying to be successful to impress people, basically, right? You're like, why are you working so hard to get a position and more money? So when you meet people, you can say, well, I'm the co-CEO or whatever of this company, and I drive a Tesla and I live in this neighborhood. Then that's going to make you feel good, right? So you don't want to bring that into bhakti, because it doesn't make Krishna feel good. You're going to impress Krishna with your Tesla, your new Tesla truck or whatever they call it. Cybertruck. Krishna, check out my Cybertruck. I'm the coolest dude in Sydney. Krishna's like, get out of here. Don't bother me. I got gold chariots. Trying to impress me with some metal and rubber. Yes?
How you were saying in the confrontation between self-fulfilling in some letters or somewhere Srila Prabhupada writes, a priority should be held, chanting, reading, and then service, but a lot of times we flip it around.
Yeah, yeah.
Is health usually just physical and emotional health?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was when Jadharani was really sick. And, Jadharani likes, I think she was really likes to work hard to the point of neglecting her health. So Prabhupada said, for her especially, health first. So it's kind of like you're trying to walk uphill and you have a sprained ankle. So maybe I should heal the sprained ankle before I walk up the hill. So if I'm trying to do service and I have a physical ailment or a mental ailment that's an impediment or emotional ailment, then it's like I'm trying to do it, but it's not working. Like if you're married, you just got married. Well, you'll find out. If things don't work in the marriage, not if, when it, not that you can't deal with it, but when there's the bump in the road, if you don't deal with it, it just gets worse and it becomes a bigger problem. When you deal with it, then, so the same thing with any problem that is directly or indirectly affecting us, we have to deal with it. So let's say someone could say, well, if I have an issue in my marriage, is it important to take care of that? And I think all of us who are married will say yes, because if you don't, it just becomes a disturbance for your life in general, which also means your devotional life as well. So we learn to take care of that, and once we take care of that, then things are smooth and peaceful at home, which is the platform from which I can smoothly and peacefully do my service and sadhana. So in my understanding of bhakti, anything which is favorable for bhakti we should do, and anything that's not favorable we shouldn't do. And it may not be directly within devotional service, but it may be something that's having a positive or negative effect on devotional service. And so if I have a physical, emotional, mental, career issue, social issue, relationship issue, whatever it is, and I don't deal with it, it can have a negative effect. Maybe it won't, but it can, and if it does, I need to deal with it. So, and by dealing with it, that is the best thing I can do for myself, right? So if you have a good relationship, you're actually taking care of yourself, because if you don't, you will suffer. It's good you know it now. So if your wife has a problem with you and you resolve that, that's going to be better. You might think, well, it's just good for her and I have to make these compromises. No, it's better for you because she'll be happy. And if she's not happy, it's always going to be upsetting for you if she's not happy. So you make a sacrifice. Maybe you don't want to make it, but you make it for her. Even it might be like she doesn't want you to come to the temple one day, so you don't come. You think, oh, this is bad. How can this be favorable for bhakti? But it solves that problem. Now she's happy. You say, okay, now you can go to the temple. I just needed to spend time with you. And so now, for the next few months, you're like, she has no problem with your coming to the temple and service. So that was helpful, right? So it's common sense. Someone had their lotus hand up? Yes.
You were mentioning about one of the country presidents being very upright and strict. From this perspective, yeah, when he got angry before he killed people, not just shouting. But if devotees are getting impacted,
Yeah.
what should be his stance about the devotees?
I don't know the person you're talking about and the situation, so I can only be general. Prabhupada did not like it when devotees were mistreated. Definitely, he didn't like that. It was very upsetting to him. When he had a leader and people were complaining about the leader, it was a big disturbance for Prabhupada. You put someone in charge and he's mistreating people. Or, in some cases during Prabhupada's time, they weren't getting sufficient prasadam or sufficient material facility. It wasn't any kind of bullying or any mistreatment otherwise. It was just, but it really upset Prabhupada. And Prabhupada did not like to hear complaints about devotees. So it was upsetting that the devotee was complaining about another devotee as much as it was upsetting that that devotee was doing things that would cause complaints. So, if I were God, it's probably good that I'm not, but if I were the God of ISKCON, I would ensure that every leader knows what is spiritual abuse, what is spiritually abusive behavior. Like it's very clear that there is such a thing as spiritual abuse, because if you don't understand that, then you think, well, once I'm in a position of leadership, then everyone just has to do what I say, and however I treat you is how I treat you, and you have to accept it. And of course that may be true for us. In some cases we have no choice. It's either stay in the temple or leave. You have to be tolerant and like that. But in the perfect scenario, leaders would be trained to understand that there are behaviors that could be considered abusive. Abusive simply means it's detrimental to the well-being of another person, material or spiritual, emotional. And I know I've been leader of many temples, and as a young devotee, we kind of felt like once you become a leader, you can do no wrong. And so like everything you do is like, well, it's tough luck, I'm the leader, and the leader's always right, even if he's not, because I'm the leader. And that doesn't work, obviously. So, I think there's a lot of devotees who are in the position of leadership, but were never trained or never understood these things. We've had some experiences also with leaders dealing with devotees who have come from very troubled backgrounds, and it requires a certain sensitivity and understanding to be able to deal with them. Because if you just deal with them like an ordinary devotee, they're so sensitive that they can become re-triggered in their traumas just by something you say in class, and you wouldn't even know it. It's just like today we're having a course in humility. So anyone who has low self-esteem, if I say today in the course, humility means to find faults with yourself, and that's all they do all day. So it's like, why do I want to come to a class to learn to find faults with myself? That's my problem. And so if I didn't understand that, I could just be, God will find faults with yourself. That's really important. See what's wrong with you. And that's valid. But for a person with low self-esteem, that can trigger all kinds of, my parents found fault with me my whole life growing up. If I look at my faults, it's devastating. I won't go out of my room. But if you didn't know that, you would just innocently say that, right? So it's difficult to be a leader, because the things you say and do affect people more than what a person who's not a leader does, because the decisions you make don't really affect a whole group of people. So it's a really difficult job. And in the leaders that I try to train, I try to help them understand what is spiritual abuse and what is trauma, how to be sensitive to it. And another important point, if you're a leader, you should be a unifier. Leaders have to be unifiers. And if a leader comes in and divides, that's a failure. He's failed as a leader. And that's not always easy to unify, but at least that should be the goal. And I would hope that someone who's a leader would understand that your job is to be a unifier. And sometimes what has been done in other places in the world to unify is that they've created new centers, because there was just, not everyone in one center saw eye to eye, and there were enough people that saw eye to eye that could form another center, and the former center was like, okay, we'll do it this way, you do it that way, and we'll be friends. So it created unity and division, and sometimes the division was necessary for the unity, otherwise together they would fight. So if we're mature and we can acknowledge that, then it's okay. Prabhupada did that often. People couldn't get along, and they were in one place, and he sent one of them somewhere else and said, well, you can start your own temple. You know, could you imagine this scenario? The GBC decides to start a prototype temple, and the only temple members are GBC men. Could you imagine how that would work? You have 35 leaders in one place. It couldn't work, even though they're all humble and cooperative. So people have a nature, they need space. And so, leadership means also to acknowledge that and not necessarily dominate those who are capable, but to give space. Prabhupada gave a lot of space. I mean, in the beginning of the movement, we were opening temples all the time. So if you were a leader and so forth, within a year or two, you'd open the temple. So, 5 million people, you can easily have 5 temples, 10 temples, right? So sometimes, that's what leadership has to do. That may or may not be practical, but unification is really important. We had a leader who took over a temple, and the first thing he did was disunify the community. That was like his great service. And it lasted about 3 months before the GBC had to remove him. It didn't work. He had his way, and he wanted to do it his way, irrespective of the history of that community, and bringing people on board who've been there working to make it better. So, it's a difficult job. It requires sensitivity. You want to hear something really interesting? There is a man in America who is a quite well-known business coach and lecturer and writer. And one day, his feed came up on my whatever. Where do those feeds come? Oh, yeah, on YouTube. And he said the number one quality for a leader is humility. And he's, in a suit and, in a boardroom giving this. And so many devotees said, you can't be humble in the corporate world because they walk all over you. And here, one of the biggest business coaches who lectures at Fortune 500 companies is saying humility is the number one quality of a leader. And he explained why. He said, because if you're humble, you will listen. And listening is the number one quality of a leader, which is, the opposite of my way or the highway, right? So I knew that, I understood that, but I was taken aback that they have finally realized that in the secular world, that it doesn't work, the autocratic method of leadership doesn't work. You have to be able to listen to people. And another thing that devotees told me that work in the corporate world, they say that you have a lot of elder leaders in 60s, 70s, 80s, and the young people coming to the companies have knowledge and skills they don't have. And if they're humble, they will even let the young people give talks to the whole company, and they'll sit and listen and learn. And if they're not humble, they won't listen. They say, what do you know? You're only 25. I'm 75. So he has 50 years of experience, but they have an education he doesn't have. So if he's humble, he'll listen. And Steve Jobs probably was not the most humble person in the world, but he recognized the principle, which is the principle of Kshatriyas, that you always want to be surrounded by Brahmins who are smarter than you. So he said, I had goals that I didn't know how to achieve them, so I always had to hire people smarter than I am so I could achieve them, and obviously listen to them. And he had his clear goals, but he had people helping him. So that, I think it's obvious. But we can kind of get lost in that I'm the authority and Prabhupada wanted you to listen to me. But even Even with Prabhupada, many, many times, he never ordered his disciples. He would say, would you like to go here? That was like, I want you to go here. But he would say, would you? Maybe it wasn't practical. Maybe they had family issues and like that. He was, no, Prabhupada, I'd rather stay here. Okay, you can stay here. Occasionally we hear stories where Prabhupada definitely wanted somebody to go, and like, you go or just sit down and chant. Those are your options. Usually with the sannyasis, GBCs, but with everyone else, would you like to do this service? No, Prabhupada, I'm happy here. Okay, you can stay here. And he'd find somebody else. So Prabhupada was not a dictator, even though he was the guru, the founder acharya of the Hare Krishna movement. One time, devotee came in and had a situation. Her husband left, and she asked Prabhupada, what should I do? And Prabhupada said, do you want me to tell you, or do you want my opinion? Like, well, in my opinion, or do you want me to tell you? He was like, that's the position he took. Yes?
Should the display of spiritual ego be always with humility?
What do you mean by spiritual ego? Well, it's said in the Hari Bhakti Vilasa you should never tell anybody how many rounds you chant. Because I think that is false ego. Like, you should never, like, you'll see, this is something to notice. You will see amongst certain devotees, if you ask them what are they doing and how they're doing, they won't say anything. They may have like huge projects going on, just wrote a new book, just opened a center, we're working on an eco-village. They won't say, like, what's you doing? What's your service? Just trying to serve, That's kind of the real ego of a Vaishnava. I mean, it's even said that the value of your rounds is lost when you tell people how many you're chanting. I mean, you may have to tell your guru, he's asking, are you chanting? But, sometimes they're like, oh, it was a Ekadasi, I chanted 32 rounds, and you're like all full of vim and vigor, And I understand that. You're happy. You want to share your happiness. But in humility, you'll just be like, yeah, great Ekadasi today. I got to chant a lot, If you are sensitive to humility, you'll start to notice. You'll start to notice when you're tooting your own horn in ways you never noticed before. Like the neat devotees are saying, yeah, what are you doing? I'm doing this, I'm doing that. What are you doing? Yeah. Just trying to do some service at the temple. You're like, you become more sensitive to what it is, it's the need for recognition. And you become sensitive that I have this need and it's unhealthy. And when I toot my horn, I'm tooting it to fulfill that need, and that need's it's contaminating. So I don't need you to know what I did. I just, I know Prabhupada knows, I know my guru knows that I'm happy. I know Krishna knows I tried. So you can, if you're conscious of it, you will be able to catch yourself tooting your own horn more often than you realize when you become aware of it. And then you realize, like, why am I doing that? Like, why do I need to do that? Because I trying to imitate Krishna. I want to be the center. I want to be honored. And so it's really important to understand, for all of us to understand, we did not join ISKCON to inflate our egos. And if you did join ISKCON to inflate your egos, you joined for the wrong reason, and now you know that you should not be here to inflate your ego. This is not the place for it. Go out there. You want to inflate your ego, go out there, Become a YouTube sensation, become a CEO, do something if that's what you want, but don't do it in here. This is not the place for it. It ruins it, right? So just be sensitive to that. I'm coming here to be a humble servant, not to, advertise myself. And if we have to advertise what we're doing and so on, then we do it humbly. I have some books, you might be interested. It's like really hard for me to say, this book is amazing. This is changing the lives of so many people. Right now as we're speaking, thousands of people's japa has been transformed by my japa affirmations. And some people say, can you advertise? And sometimes I do it, but it's very awkward to do it, because it's out of place for a Vaishnava to like, this is a really good book, we've sold 10,000 copies in the last month, and if you don't get one, half your life is wasted, and how do you say these things? Yes?
Sorry, double dipping. What are we going to do when all the Prabhupada disciples go?
What are we going to do? Well, I can tell you what happened when Prabhupada left. There was this, when Prabhupada left, it was like the dam gates of enthusiasm opened. We were more enthusiastic. In the 3 years after Prabhupada left, we were more enthusiastic, and we did more stupid things than we ever did before. So you have to be careful that your enthusiasm is guided by intelligence. Okay, the Prabhupada disciples are gone. We have to take the responsibility. You feel this, and then you start becoming proud and like, I'm gonna become a guru and this, and you're immature. So you have to be really careful about that enthusiasm that's going to come, because you're going to feel the burden of responsibility, because you don't feel it as much now, because you always know someone else will catch the mess that you make if you make it, right? So that's actually what happened. Isn't that interesting? Like, Prabhupada left, okay, it's with us. We did so many horrendous, abusive things. We were all like 28. What do? You unleash a bunch of 28-year-olds with the Hare Krishna movement. And 11 of them are gurus who think they have to act like Prabhupada. Whoa, it was a disaster. If we were more mature and had that same enthusiasm, it wouldn't have been a disaster. We would have very mature devotees working well together. So you have to be careful. The thing you have to be careful about, which is what we're trying to be careful about, is that deviation is so easy. It's just like natural. It's almost subconscious. It goes this way, you don't notice it, and it goes this way, you don't notice it. And after 20 years, it's over here, and you didn't notice it because it was so incremental. So for me, as a Prabhupada disciple, when I travel, I see changes everywhere that none of you see, because it was already changed when you came, and it happened, and nobody noticed it. So be very careful about changing anything. And if you're going to change anything, there has to be validity to changing it, and you have to make sure it's not something that Prabhupada would be upset about. And if you're not sure, just imagine you go to Prabhupada's Vyasa-san and you tell him, Prabhupada, I'm doing this. And just kind of feel what you think he would say. I've done some out-of-the-box things, and I really had to meditate. Is this okay? And often, Prabhupada would evaluate it by the result. So you try this, but there's no result. Well, why continue to do it? Because it's already a little off-center, and it's not bringing in more people. There's not a tangible benefit. Why do it? So Prabhupada was always, okay, if you're going off-center, let me see the result. If you want to do this, let's see the result. And if you could produce a result, you'd say, yeah. Maybe you know this story, that they came out with a movie, God, maybe it was called Life Comes from Life. It was actually a short film of two devotees having a conversation at a university. Have you ever seen that film? It was about, like, one devotee's a chemistry student, and one devotee, they're not plain devotees, they're friends. So he's a chemistry student, and the other one is just starting to read Bhagavad Gita, and the whole thing is like they're having conversations about what he's learning in his biology class and what he's learning in Bhagavad Gita, and they're having these like life come from life discussions, And it was like a TV show, like a half-hour TV show. And they both are really good actors, and they did a really good job. And it had there was no Hare Krishna mantra, there was no tilak, there was no dhotis. And it had, the background music for the film, which was just I think something Mangalananda did. So it was a different film than was ever done, because all the films before that were just documentaries on devotees. Here are the Hare Krishnas coming down, wherever you do Harinam here at King's Cross or whatever. The Haris are doing, and they show the devotees chanting and jumping up and down like in the 70s. So all the films were like that, branding, promoting. And this was like two devotees playing ordinary people. So they showed it to Prabhupada. And after Prabhupada saw it, he said, so, what do you think? And one of the sannyasis says, Prabhupada, I think this is for women and children. It's like, this gives you an idea of what the movement was like in 75. Yeah. And, this is unlike the other films, and, I don't think this is so good, because there was no Harinam in it, and no Mahamantra, no. So, Prabhupada asked Yadabara, who made the film. Yadabara Prabhu, he said, so, what do people say about the film? He said, well, Yadabara said, recently I showed it, and a person came up to me and said, now I finally understand that I'm not the body.
Somebody actually
By seeing this film in Prabhupada, and he told that to Prabhupada, said, Prabhupada, therefore it's successful.
Up and down and up and down.
So he would, and there's another story.
I'm not having a middle-age crisis here.
Tamal Krishna Maharaj was the GBC in India, and it was really difficult, and he wanted to go to America to get a break. So he joined Vishnu Jan, and they started the Radha Damodar party. Well, the party had already been started. He joined it and expanded it. And Prabhupada thought he would just go to America for a few months, and then he would go back to India. So Prabhupada came back to America, and he said, so, are you ready to go back?
I've seen you hanging around jumping with these Hare Krishnas for a while. Do you have an answer for my question? So he said, I lost a couple of my friends.